This video essay will explore how brutalist architecture impacts the film's narrative. I will be looking into the two films High Rise, directed by Ben Wheatley, and See You Tomorrow Everyone, directed by Yoshihiro Nakamura. Brutalist architecture, coming from the French expression béton brut, meaning rough or raw concrete, is part of the modernist architectural movement that came about in the 1950s after World War II and was very popular up until around the 1970s. Brutalist buildings are typically, but not always, made from concrete with very angular shapes. It is associated in the UK with poorer areas as it is inexpensive to make. Many brutalist high-rises were created after the war as the country was economically depressed. So how would architecture impact a film's narrative? When writing about architecture in film, Mark Lamster says, "On a practical level, architecture sets a scene, conveying information about plot and character while contributing to the overall feel of a movie. So filmmakers can use the environment of a film to influence and play with the characters and the narrative." Lamster also writes, "In more discrete ways, filmmakers can use their cameras to make statements about the built or unbuilt environment, or use that environment to comment metaphorically on any variety of the subjects, from the lives of the characters in their films to the nature of contemporary society." Although in the UK, brutalist high-rises typically accommodate people from poorer backgrounds, in the film High Rise, however, the building accommodates people from all economic backgrounds. Set in London, it works as a symbol for a societal structure. The poorer residents are at the bottom of the building, and the residents with the more respected professions are higher up in the building. The criticisms of brutalist architecture, specifically in the UK, are many. In the book Walls Have Feelings, Architecture, Film and the City, Catherine Schonfield states, "For architects, this was both the last time the profession could transform the everyday lives of the many on a concerted scale, and also the last time a style had a social and political purpose, imbued with architectural integrity. As for the public, they just hate it." The building in High Rise is a clearly brutalist building, as we can tell by the concrete and the structure.
Of course, I'm a modernist by trade.
The building itself becomes the central focus, completely controlling the entire narrative of the film. It is not used as a location or a backdrop, it is used as the central protagonist. In the article Between the Image and the Building, an architectural tour of High Rise, Amy Butte writes, "It acts as the central protagonist in the narrative of social disinterrogation." The film is adapted from a J.G. Ballard novel, an author known for using architecture to construct his narrative. Amy Butte writes, "The science fiction author of choice for architects, Ballard's writing contains a subversive appreciation for the power of the built environment, its latent potential to influence individuals and structure society." What Butte is saying here is that buildings themselves can influence and change individuals and societies. Brutalist buildings, especially high-rises, are both physical and metaphorical structures.
It looks like the unconscious diagram of some kind of psychic event.
The building itself allows for the character's descent into barbaric behaviour. Butte states, "The high-rise, as designed and realised by Mark Tisley, emphatically conveys the atmosphere of barely repressed menace through its striking spatial form, the materiality becoming an active participant in the residents' fall from grace, a spatial incitement to social violence."
黒く第二団地へようこそ。団地は全部で35棟。
The projects in See You Tomorrow Everyone are part of the modernist movement and are very influential of European Western estates that are part of brutalist architecture. This architecture is specifically used as a design for these housing estates as they are cheap and easy to make, much like the ones in the UK. The projects in See You Tomorrow are Japanese parallel to the council estates or high-rises in Britain. The Japanese word for these projects in See You Tomorrow Everyone is called danchi, which is the word for a large cluster of apartment buildings of a particular style and design, typically built as public housing by a government authority. Danchis were built in the 1950s, 60s and 70s, much like the UK, in correlation with the increasing Japanese population. In the early 50s, modernist-style brutalism started to come about in Japan that consisted of concrete and geometric structures, much like it does everywhere else. See You Tomorrow, Everyone begins off by advertising the estate as a very modernist utopia, similar to that of High Rise. What happens in real life and in these films is that the quality of the estates just drops dramatically over time. Much like the building in High Rise, the projects in See You Tomorrow hold some shops and other amenities, meaning the residents don't have to leave. Satoru can leave the projects. He, like the tenants in High Rise, choose not to. The projects therefore control the narrative by controlling the space in which Satoru is emotionally bound to. Satoru feels like he can't leave the confines of the projects, therefore the estate acts as a physical boundary and a somewhat mental prison. For him, however, it's not quite a prison. It is in fact the only place where he feels safe and he feels like he can protect the other tenants. So within the two films, the characters become confined to their spaces. For Satoru, it is the projects, and for Dr. Lang and the rest of the cast, it is the High Rise. Satoru uses the projects as a safe haven, only to leave when his mother is admitted to hospital. For the rest of the film, the narrative revolves around the projects, however his mother's death is external, changing the fact that the entire narrative up until this point has revolved around the projects. With High Rise, the narrative solely focuses on what happens within the building, rarely touching on the outside world. I think this is a possible reflection upon society's tendency to forget about or purposely not show what happens in poorer areas of the world. Overall, in See You Tomorrow, Everyone, the social aspect of the architecture is something that really controls the film's narrative. In High Rise, it is more the politics and the social hierarchy that the architecture creates that controls the film's narrative. These themes that impact both films' narratives directly correlate to the politics and physical structure of brutalist architecture.